JD Central, isn't it?
That's it.
Right, okay.
Okay, we're here today with Tony Davidson.
Hi. Good to be here, Mark, and do an interview for JD Central. It's an important part of the JD history, and it's great to be here. So
Fantastic.
fire your questions away.
Okay, brilliant to have you here, Tony. Owner of the famous T J Davidson's rehearsal room, which is
the record company.
and TJM Records. Okay, so start with the obvious question, Tony. What made you decide to write a book about your time in the music business?
Well, I thought it was important to actually write a book about the early history of the Manchester scene before Factory became along, and I was prompted by many people to do it, and when it kind of came into fruition, I laid out my plan. It took 4 years to do the book, but I just think it's, without being too kind of philosophical about it, I think it's a very important part of Manchester history, and it's been borne out by the bands, Joy Division, Buzzcocks, The Fall, every other band, 99% of bands that pass through TJM, bands like all the members of Morris's band, The Fall, the interaction I had with them, and I just think it's just important to put it down because it was the formation of the Manchester scene, and Mick Middles made a very, very good point. It's like firing a gun. You know, Tony Davidson was there, myself, just bring it all into fruition. Then later on, obviously, Tony Wilson came down, and he kind of developed it into the scene it is today. But yeah, I'm really, really pleased with it, and the book has got absolutely fantastic reviews, great feedback from people who bought the book. We've initially done a pressing of 500 full colour hardback, and it's going to become a real collector's piece. We've sold just over 400 on my Facebook page and at the book launch, and we've been offered a book deal in London before it goes nationwide in the world, which I'm very proud of. Very pleased with the book, and I just think this first initial thing will be a real collector's item for people who bought it, and people have bought into the actual idea of it because it is a very high quality book. It cost a fortune to make, it ran into like nearly £4,000, but I think it's worth it to capture the history of what TJM was doing. And we've got acts not only from Joy Division, acts like Billy Duffy, Slaughter and the Dogs, Edwina, who was formerly Eddie Garrity, a whole host. And it's not all about the famous bands, it's about bands who got caught up in the movement, the punk movement, and came down to the TJM and developed the songs. Some had some success, some had minor success, but the overall thing, it was a very positive thing, and it changed people's lives. Also, people went on to have successful careers. When you think people like Mike Sweeney in the Salford Jets, he came down, now he's been a radio presenter for 40 years. People like David Gleave, who now a famous photographer. The guy from Sweden who did my artwork, he's a famous graphic designer over there and actor. So it spawned a lot of creativity. Cummings came down, Anton Corbin came down, David Gleave, 3 famous photographers. I've got to mention them in the context because they took photos, which is a historical document of the actual place. So yes, so I'm very proud of what I've done, really.
Good. I mean, from what you're saying, it was a hub for artistic, creative people, wasn't it?
Yes, it did.
And you provided that.
It did. It didn't. I had the initial idea, but you don't know how the things go. There was no, back then there was no internet. There was no kind of mobile phones. So you had to wait to get your the TJM thing out. It was plastering around Manchester, and we had every band. We had bands even like Sad Cafe who came down, which was a big thing, and they interacted with all the other bands and helped a lot of bands. But there was a great kind of camaraderie there. There's a lot of bitchiness. Peter Hook said it in the interview on stage, but everybody just wanted to succeed. But there was a lot of fun that went on there, and there's so many stories in the book, and I've tried to capture that really, and I think it's come across pretty well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You know, you were a catalyst that sparked a revolution.
Yeah,
you know, to sum it up.
Very nice of you to say that, but people have said that, and it's nice to have that accolade. It
Yeah.
really is.
So you've mentioned your book there, and all the proceeds for the posters you've produced over the past couple of years and this book are going to the Lou
Yeah.
Macari Foundation for Homeless
Yeah,
People.
what we've done, the profits are going, and we've got a check now to, the first check is for the actual book launch, the ticket sales. We had over 300 people bought it on the night. Only 200 people turned up, and I can understand that because it was launched pre-COVID, but people have bought the tickets, and there's well over £1,000 going from ticket sales. It cost £1,500 to book the hall, but I'm glad I did it because it was a great showcase of the thing. I could have got clubs in Manchester for free. I thought do it properly, and I think people appreciated that.
They did. So, have you got a sort of total of what you've raised so far?
Yeah, total raised so far is nearly £4,000. But we hope obviously to raise quite a bit more from the book launch.
Brilliant.
It's going to Macari. Already nearly £2,500 has been given to him, and so I'm seeing him next week, 10 days time. We've made an appointment, so another check's coming to him. Yeah, so it's all positive. And also as an offshoot, Lou Macari came down with the 1970. It's in the book, this story. They came down with the 1979 Man United FA Cup team to rehearse the song Onward Sexton Soldiers. It was an absolute disaster, and it's a funny story how they came down and the interaction they had with the bands there. So yeah,
Well, the song wasn't much
no,
of it.
I mean Lou gave it. Lou was due to appear. Unfortunately, had football commitments at Old Trafford, but he did a video and he talked about it. It was quite humorous on the night. I don't know if you can remember it.
I do, yes.
And it was one of the stories. I mean, we've got Billy Duffy now, and Nick Rossi from LA just did a great video, and Mark Radcliffe. So all these sort of people and who've come forward and just talked about the stories. It was great to have everything on board. Great to have Hooky. Great to have John Robb. Great to Sweeney. The feedback from the audience was fantastic, and I'm really proud of it. It's all come to fruition. It's really
Very good. Very good.
You know, and I thank Georgina Robinson for doing her bit on helping me to bring it together, because we worked very closely to it, and well done Georgina for doing it.
It was a good night, and what I liked particularly was the fact that it wasn't just you on stage with a few people. There was a videos of people.
Yeah.
There was a band.
Yeah.
You know, it was really well thought through and put together.
Yeah, we both give it a lot of thought, and the crowd appreciated it as well. It wasn't just something that, and I could tell that by the way the book sells afterwards, the way people hung round to talk, and that was a great thing.
Very good. Now, I'm aware we're talking to a Joy Division audience mainly here.
Yeah,
so
of course, yeah.
What sort of things can Joy Division fans read about in your book?
Right, there's a whole host of things. Firstly, when Joy Division came, they came as a band called Warsaw, and I looked at the band initially, thought, oh, the nice lads, they're just doing it, this is a hobby like a lot of the bands. At the time we had bands that were breaking like Buzzcocks, Slaughter and the Dogs, who were the first band to tour Europe. So they were right down the pecking order. And it was a funny thing, I went to the second Sex Pistols concert when I was managing a band called The Drones, and Joy Division blew Warsaw right in front of me, and they got caught up with the excitement, and that was the kind of motivation for me to start TJM and buy the property. But getting back to Joy Division, they came in as a band. I used to come round regularly to see them, talk to them. Very nice guys, very easy to talk to. Very funny thing, they brought out the first record which had the Nazi type of thing, but they weren't any way type of right wing or anything like that. They were, I think, doing it for a reaction, which they got. And the pressing was a very poor pressing. They came in to my office and they owed a bit of back rent, and they gave me 3 boxes. He said, would you want to knock this off for the rent? Now those singles going for £3,000 today, I had 25 in each box.
Oh,
so I had a box, said, oh, I'll have a box, and gave them all away. But this is what stories are made of. Another story, Joy Division one day thought, oh, Tony Davidson is doing something right. We're going to ask him to manage us. He bought it up, Hooky bought it up, and I turned them down flatly. I said, give me a couple of weeks to think about it. He took me for a kebab up in Piccadilly. There was no Burger King, no McDonald's there. There was one kebab place, a greasy place under the Piccadilly Hotel. And They said, "Will you manage it?" I said, "Give us a couple of weeks." And in that time, I was signing Slut, and the Dogs thought they're a better option. Yeah, talk about the man who turned. Oh, we have.
No, we're all right.
Talk about the man who turned down the Beatles. You know, but it was all done when Rob Gretton came down. We had a good laugh about it, and he was the man to bring them forward. But there's so much interaction. The video "Love Will Tear Us Apart" was done there, and I remember Anton Corbin, a famous photographer, coming down on the day to take shots. So there's loads and loads of things. And my interaction with them, I lent them £500 to bring out the 12-inch version of An Ideal for Living. If you look on the back of it, it's got many thanks to Tony Davidson. So there's so many stories, there's loads and loads more in the book. But Joy Division had a unique sound. If you could just compare it, at that time, a lot of the bands were doing the 4-chord riffs. The sound emitting from the Joy Division room was totally unique, totally off the wall. They were developing it. A lot of people thought, "Oh, what's that music?" But I could hear from my office the sounds emitting from it was something unique. So the Buzzcocks had it as well. The Fall had it. Certain bands had it, but Joy Division have gone on to, the famous all over the world, and I'm just really proud to be associated with it. And Hooky coming down, I've got to stress this. Hooky coming down was magnanimous. He just entered into the spirit of things. He was fantastic. I haven't seen him for 40 years. He's just a fantastic guy. And without getting too smashy and nicey about it, the guy does a lot for charity. And, you can't take that away from him. He's worked hard to, develop the band, his band. And I've got nothing but respect for him. Also for John Robb and Mike Sweeney, who came in the time. But, Hooky's a great guy. You can see we're focusing on Joy Division.
Yeah. You mentioned Rob Gretton there. Did you like Rob?
Rob was a fantastic guy. I knew Rob when he managed the band for The Panic, and he was connected with Rabid Records, and he used to come down to TJM, and I remember quite clearly, they're chatting, we used to chat about football, rapping, bands. He very, very wanted to know about certain bands. He said, "Is there any good bands that I've got anything about them, Tony?" I said, "You wanted to know about a band that's different? Joy Division." I said, "They've asked me to manage them, but I'm thinking about it, but they are something different. If you want to get involved with something different, this is the band to get involved with." So Rob he took my offer, he took it up and he followed it through. But Rob was a great manager, and he did a lot for the band, and he was the right man for the job. And God rest his soul, he passed away far too young.
Didn't he? Yeah, was he 47 or 48?
47, no age at all. No age at all.
Tony Wilson, did you ever bump into Tony?
Yeah, I did. It was kind of my relationship with Tony was he used to come down with a little ensemble to the TJM with him. He used to wear a Panama hat, and sometimes he was friendly and sometimes he was offhand, and I've just got to be honest. But Tony's gone on to, he developed what he's done for Manchester music is fantastic, and he had the platform and he was articulate enough to develop it through his TV channel. And another soul that's lost to Manchester music, died with cancer too early. And near the end, I did meet Tony. He became a very devout Catholic. And not saying I was a devout Catholic, but we bumped into each other at the Hidden Gem when he was ravaged with cancer. And I've got to say that people don't realise this. He used to go to a priest for kind of, to talk about his life and get confession, whatever. And he talked to me about it. And there was another side to Tony. I mean, he led a rock and roll decadent lifestyle. He'd be first to admit it, but he was he was such an intelligent guy. Near the end, he wanted peace in his life, and it's an off-the-wall thing that people don't realise that. And I would like to mention that really.
Yeah.
He was quite, he went back to a kind of religious way of life, whatever thought process. Where'd you go after life? He didn't believe you got thrown in a hole, and that was the end of it. It's a bit of an off-the-wall thing to do, but it was very poignant meeting him like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that side of Tony Wilson.
It's good to
great
know that.
Guy. Yeah.
It's good to know that side. And Ian Curtis, what are your memories of Ian?
Ian Curtis was just a nice guy. Do you know, Ian never had an edge with me. He used to come into the office. Ian came down to ask could I lend £500 to bring out the 12-inch version of An Idea for Living, because the single was that poor.
And he'd already borrowed the money for the single.
Yeah, that's right. And they had no money, so he came down on. I said, yeah, no problem, guys. They owed me 100 and. There's a famous letter actually. They owed me back like £100 odd. I said, well, put the £100 on just to make sure I got it.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of bands didn't pay. Yeah, and they paid the extra money, and yeah, and that was the start of Joy Division's rise to fame. Once a 12-inch single came out. It was, and you know, I was part of that, and I'm just proud of these things. These things can get swept under the carpet, but they're an important part of the development of bands. And when I look back on these things, it's just it makes me happy that I was part of something great. And also with the legacy that TJM, I'm glad it's come out in the book form. I'm glad that a major London publisher has taken it on to develop it. I've got 2 offers, so I'm just not being arrogant. I'm just working out the best offer which will develop it. And so it's onwards and upwards.
That's
so
good. That's very good. Do you remember hearing about Ian's suicide?
Yeah, I did. It was just after they did they were due to go to America 4 or 5 days later. They shot the video, and I remember on the day Anton Corbin came. He's now a very famous photographer from he was a Dutch guy from a magazine called O, and he came up, and I remember talking to him because he was taking photos of that particular thing. The video shoot, and he said Ian doesn't look right, and just like an observation. And I knew prior to that he came down and he's very melancholy in my office to talk, but you don't think he's going to go to the extreme of what happened. I think, well, I can't think, I can only surmise. I know he had problems, you know, he was guilt ridden to my mind. He did mention about his wife, and he was having an affair with a German girl, which, you know, probably got loads of attention. It's not for me to judge, but he did mention that. But you don't think at these things at the time, but these things probably built up with him, with his wife, and the whole catalyst. And now he's a rock and roll star.
Yeah.
You know, all these things immortalise him, like John Lennon, and yeah.
That's right. Yeah, very
but
much.
he was a talent. He was a massive talent. You know,
Yeah.
all the band admit it, and yeah, poor guy's gone, left us.
Okay, so coming back to your book now, Tony, what would you say were the most rewarding aspects of writing your memoirs?
The most rewarding aspects is to seeing it come to fruition and to see the finished product. And I've had a fantastic graphic designer, Chris Connolly, who I worked very closely with, who's kind of put it all together, and with the pictures, etc. And I want to thank people like Kevin Cummings, because a couple of photos went in that were credited to him. I didn't realise that. I was told it was a Buzzcocks roadie took it. Murray, another Slaughter one. He said, "Oh, somebody else took it from the band," but it wasn't. But it was very magnanimous. So I've got to put that on record. Didn't want any money for it, and he gave me some good advice about copyright. So big up to Kevin Cummings for you know.
That's
I know
good to know.
he's a great photographer, and you know, he's made his name through the TJM. Well, he started off with the TJM. Now he's one of the world famous photographers.
He is.
So yeah.
Good. What achievement are you most proud of in your career in the music industry? What would you say?
I'm proud of taking the chance of not settling down to middle class life. I was going to get married and buy quite a big property in Winslow. I had quite a bit of money through luck buying gold when gold was high, and thankfully I didn't take the chance of putting the money into the house, buying the building, which was a loss leader, throwing my money to developing TJM Records and rehearsal studios. It was 2 years of a fantastic ride. The bands are met, the characters are met, all came to kind of fruition on the book launch night, and I'm part of history, and I'm proud of that really. I could have taken the easy option, you know, but my lifestyle is my lifestyle, and I'm proud I've done that really.
Good.
And
it created a lot of memories for yourself and for everybody else.
yeah,
in
it
the
did,
process.
and there was a lot of love. I'm not being too dramatic. A lot of people, there was a lot of goodwill in the book launch, at the book launch. So I'm very proud of that, really. Yeah.
Very good. Now, if Joy Division fans could go back in time, they'd probably go to the rehearsal room, studios, and grab that door, that famous white door.
Yeah, so many people have said that. Sorry,
and keep it, before it went for demolition.
You know what? I even had the mind to do that, and I had to sell the property, just get my money back, because I wish I'd kept it, because it was worth 2-3 million. It's a luxury block of flats. It took up 2/3 of the street, but I was under pressure from my wife to get married and settle down, buy a house, and I had to clear a big tax debt. So I'm sorry I did it, but I was going to take the door off, because they weren't interested in the door when I sold the property. And I thought, right, I'm going to do that. So I got 2 workmen, because it's a massive, massive heavy door. Went down, and it was all boarded up with metal shutters, ready to be demolished. So so that was it really. So history, I would have put it up and put it on auction. Some Japanese guy would have bought it probably.
Yeah. Now, out of all the Manchester bands from the late 70s, what were the standout songs for you from that era, would you say?
The standout songs, I would say, obviously, Love Will Tear Us Apart, because that's such an iconic song, and it was done at the TJM Studios. Bands like the Buzzcocks, I could hear them develop their sounds. My office was above theirs, and I could hear them develop Ever Fallen in Love. And it was a very simple thought process. They'd be playing riffs, and Shelley would walk in and just start strumming away, and then the nucleus of the song would come and it'd develop. It was like, God, that's brilliant. What's that song? Then you hear him on top of the pops. He just popped down to, what is that song? Oh, we're just doing it. And they were very nonchalant and very kind of low key about it. Great band, great musician. The Four weren't what I call a musical, kind of a catchy, one who made catchy songs, but totally unique character mark. And some of his songs would kind of stand out. In the later stage, I liked his music. There were so many bands. Sad Cafe, an offshoot, a more traditional band, but Everyday Hurts. That was a great song. He developed it that. And so even the lesser, not lesser bands like Thrust and the Dogs, they were a great band musical. There was so even the TJM, the Distractions were fantastic. Made Record of the Week, great band. A band I messed up with really. I should have just concentrated more on them. There's so many ifs and buts of looking back at this, but V2 is a great single as well. Yeah, there were so many bands. Victim from Belfast who came over. It's all coming to me now. I could go on and on and on.
So finally, what's next for you, Tony? Would you consider getting involved in the music business again?
Yeah, well, I have. I've given it great thought, and a promoter from London. After working at the Stoller Hall, which a lot of people didn't know existed, is a fantastic venue, and there's other great venues, but I've been offered a kind of a partnership to develop some bands, and we're working. Actually, I don't want to talk about it until it comes to fruition, but there's a major act from the 60s. I mean, a major kind of cult hero. We're bringing together to put on stage for 2 nights at Stoller Hall, but when it's signed, it'll be done, and we're looking forward to working with that. So it's very exciting, like it's onwards and upwards. I would just like to say, if it's okay, there's a few books left on the TJM story before it goes to the first edition. So anybody interested, contact me on my Facebook page in the name of Anthony Davidson, and that'd be great.
Brilliant, yeah, and the link's also on Joy Division Central for you, so you can click on that as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's absolutely brilliant, Tony. Thank
Lovely
you so much.
Lovely to speak to you, and this guy does a lot for Joy Division, keeping the name, and he's quite unique in what he does.
Thank you, I appreciate that, mate.
All right. That's
Wonderful.
great. So is that